Hey there, everybody. Welcome. I hope that you can hear me and see me okay. We're in another new location today in the cottage. We're going to be talking about a topic today that I get asked about a ton, and that is, are Kegels bad for me? Should I be doing Kegels? Just the topic in question of Kegels seems to be coming at me a ton lately, so I thought this would be a useful one. So today we're going into 3 reasons why Kegels are not the worst. And we'll also talk about some of the reasons when they can be problematic, but just know that I want you to understand when we should use Kegels, when we shouldn't use Kegels, and what a Kegel actually is, what the purpose of it is. And hopefully this will clear up some confusion for us today. All right, let me know if you are on live right now, if you are here, and if you can hear me and see me okay. My name is Jessie Wendell. I am a prenatal and postnatal exercise specialist, and so I talk about Kegels often. For a lot of my clients, we are pulling back the reins on Kegels. We are not doing hundreds of Kegels multiple times per day. We're just getting much more specific and intentional on why we're using Kegels. And it is not to strengthen the pelvic floor in pregnancy and postpartum for every single person. That's not the whole story whatsoever. And this is often what people are being told, what the education on Kegels is about in pregnancy and postpartum. And it's just misguided, unfortunately. So let's clear this up first, what I would actually be suggesting someone to be doing if they were told to do Kegels, where that might go wrong in some of the messaging and prescription around Kegels coming from, say, other healthcare providers. And then 3 reasons why I think that learning how to do a Kegel properly is actually useful. Hey, Alyssa, awesome to see you here. Okay. So here's where things tend to go wrong with Kegels. Often, the idea of Kegels is that we are supposed to do so many reps, honestly hundreds a day, or 3 times 100 Kegels. Do your Kegels every time you get to a stoplight. Do them all throughout that stoplight. Stop when you stop driving. Start when you start driving again. Or do Kegels every time you are feeding your baby. These are some of the ideas around Kegels that often are not helpful because typically we do not need that type of volume. We don't need that many reps. We don't need that many sets. But also, if we're doing Kegels in that manner, there's unlikely to be any real purpose behind it. There's no connection with the breath. There's no intentional movement with the Kegel, and then other movement with your body, say lifting weights or lifting babies, lifting other loads. So the Kegel just exists in isolation for the most part, which is not going to be that helpful for a lot of people's bodies, and might actually create more harm than good, especially for people like me who might be more prone to hypertension or holding tension in the pelvic floor. This is just going to be a disaster scenario, quite honestly. So when I talk about Kegels with my clients, we are talking about an intentional lifting of tension, lifting of the pelvic floor, gaining of tension, and then releasing of tension, releasing and letting go of the pelvic floor muscles. And it is connected with breath. It doesn't just exist by itself in nature at the stop sign when you're feeding baby. We really practice this lifting and lowering and letting go of the pelvic floor, connect that with the breath, and then take it into movement as well. So there's a progression when we learn how to connect to the pelvic floor, and there's always this end goal in mind to be able to be functional with this Kegeling action, not simply just to be able to do reps and reps and reps of it and build up strength that way. That's probably not going to be necessary for that many bodies. So here's number 1 reason why I do think it is actually important to learn how to do a proper Kegel or a pelvic floor contraction or lift. Often I think it is maybe better communicated if we say a pelvic floor lift and contraction instead of Kegel, but I'm going to use those terms interchangeably because we're really talking about the same thing, just this upgraded version of the Kegel, one that has more intention and purpose behind it. So number one reason why I think it is key to learn how to do this movement is because it is so important for us to learn how to feel the pelvic floor lowering, letting go, and then lifting. So this is how I talk about the action with the pelvic floor and the connection with the breath. So on the inhale breath, we want to feel this letting go, lowering of the pelvic floor. So we'll actually feel some movement gently downwards, especially if we're just in a, say, supine lying on your back or side lying. We want to feel some movement, some letting go, releasing and lowering of the pelvic floor. On the exhale breath, we're going to feel this lifting upwards, this pelvic floor lift or contraction. We're gaining tension in those muscles. We're feeling this muscular support. It's good to be able to feel both of those movements happening. So key to be able to sense that in your body. So this is one reason why I think it is actually important to learn how to do a proper Kegel. A note, if you can, see pelvic health, pelvic floor physio, so they can assess if you are actually doing a proper Kegel in the right manner, connected with your breath, releasing enough tension, gaining enough tension. They can test your strength, your endurance of the pelvic floor. So if you're at all confused on whether you're doing it correctly, whether you're feeling the right thing in the right place, they are a fantastic resource to go to. So again, I think it's so important for us to be able to sense the let go, lower, and then lift in our own bodies. Because if we can't feel that, say in a supported position, child's pose, side lying, then we might run into some difficulties along the way when we do start loading our bodies more in exercise, for example. So coaches and trainers, make sure your clients can sense this well first before loading the body back with heavier stuff, okay? So second reason why I think it's so key for us to be able to do a Kegeling action or pelvic floor lifting contraction well is because we need to then connect this movement, again, adding the breath piece onto that, and then taking that into our loaded exercises in the gym in our daily life. So we want our clients, we want ourselves to be able to picture how the pelvic floor is moving with breath, and then where we might need that in our heavier lifts, in our movements, where we might need to use the breath in order to support our bodies under load. So often, this isn't a key piece of the puzzle that we think about in terms of exercise. Again, we often think that the pelvic floor just acts in isolation. That's why we do hundreds of reps of Kegels, but it doesn't. It is so key to all the movements that we are doing in our daily life and even when we're not moving. But when we put this into practice in the gym, in exercise, lifting kiddos and toddlers, we need to understand, we need to be able to feel in our body, connect that with our breath, and where we might need to be using more strength, more power, where our pelvic floor might need more support. So that's the second reason. We have to understand and feel this in our bodies and connect it with our heavier loaded movements. Third reason why I don't think Kegels are the worst for everybody is because some people will need some strengthening, oftentimes much strengthening of the pelvic floor. The tools that pelvic floor physios, pelvic health physios are using, and the range of Kegeling activities that they are prescribing can be really helpful for some people who are trying to regain strength, build strength in the pelvic floor. So when we think about Kegels, often we'll just think about this lifting, lowering action, but there's so many different ranges of reps, so many different modes of Kegels that pelvic floor physios might give that will be specific to that person and their needs. And that can be really useful for some people. It can also just be really useful for people to get back connected into their bodies, especially postpartum, to feel that pelvic floor and deep abdominal contraction. Especially if there was some significant physical trauma postpartum, this might be exactly where someone needs to start in order to be able to, again, connect the abdominals, the trunk, the pelvic floor with breath before we move into heavier loaded movements. So those are my 3 reasons. Number 1, I think it's super important that we need to understand and feel in our bodies what that let go, lowering, and lifting feels like in our pelvic floor. Number 2, we want to be able to connect that with breath and then with movement, so we understand how we can use the pelvic floor to be able to generate more power and strength and support our bodies. And number 3, some people really truly do need to be building and regaining strength at the pelvic floor, and Kegels can be highly effective options for those people. Pelvic floor physios are our friends. Get assessed by them so you know if you're one of those people who do need to be regaining strength, and Kegels will be effective. And also to be able to tell if you are doing that Kegel, that pelvic floor lift contraction and releasing, lowering, and let go action properly. I think that's everything. This is pretty good. I can hear toddler out there. She hasn't walked in yet. So I think that is everything for today. Short and sweet. If you have any questions on this, do let me know. Again, probably no one needs to be doing those hundreds of reps of Kegels per day. If you are doing Kegels, ensure that you are feeling the action of the pelvic floor and that you are connecting it with breath and not just holding your breath and contracting your pelvic floor 1,000,001 times. All right, friends, if you're catching the replay, let me know if you have any questions at all, and I will see you soon.